So we'll actually start with something that, again, with this show, you get all the coverage across the sport of college football. Obviously, a constantly changing landscape with NIL, conference realignment, which was kind of slowed down for a bit. But of course, the ACC right now has been in the middle of a lot of projected movement still to come. As we understand, Clemson and Florida State have been, in their battles against the conference. But we had big news break this morning from David Hale of ESPN, as I will pull up the tweet here, that sources tell himself and Andrea Adelson of ESPN that ESPN has picked up its option on the ACC TV deal through 2036. Additionally, and this is the part that I think really caught a lot of people's attention, additionally, the league is working toward a new revenue distribution model to reward biggest brands that would keep Clemson and FSU in the fold. So we'll get into the specifics of this. I just wanted to point out my favorite part of this entire report. Again, the report is that ESPN is extending their option to televise ACC sports through 36, but this is an ESPN report. And they said ESPN declined to comment on the matter. So that was my favorite part. It was the top story on ESPN this morning on ESPN.com. And it's about ESPN, but ESPN will not, respond to the request there. So I thought that was funny here, but big news here for the ACC potentially.
Yeah, I hope they have some good sources on this one, given what they're reporting on. So a lot of different incentives and goals here. So let's start with ESPN, who made the initial decision, which is to extend. According to the reporting, one of the reasons ACC was able to get this extension is because they said that they would push for what they call value adds, more marquee matchups, football and basketball. And it suggested that some of that includes Notre Dame playing more ACC games. They're already playing 5 or 6 a year, plus all the other sports. So the idea is that Notre Dame is going to be an even bigger factor in the ACC. And that's part of what the ACC is pitching ESPN, along with these, again, quote unquote, value adds, more marquee games, more just high level content to make it worth ESPN's while to renew. So you move from that. You can say, okay, now you got this done. The next big question: Clemson, Florida State, making a lot of noise, litigation. We know all about that. You also have Miami, North Carolina teams that are not pushing in that way, but clearly are concerned about the idea that the Big Ten and the SEC could further expand their lead in the race to be a national champion, right? This ACC's had national champions between Clemson and Florida State, historically Miami, before they joined the ACC. But as the revenue disparity gets greater, maybe it doesn't affect the revenue sharing, depending on what the cap is, but it could impact coach spending, facility spending, et cetera. So if you're Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Miami, you want to close that gap. You want to make sure that that's not getting wider. So one of the ways, according to the report, that the ACC is putting Clemson and Florida State, Miami, North Carolina at ease is by providing two sort of factors here based on, number one, brand, and number two, success, that create additional revenue for certain schools. So the brand fund, as it's called, would theoretically, this needs to be approved, provide more money for schools that have a disproportionate impact on the ACC's revenue, TV deal, et cetera. And according to the report, this would include those 4 schools, Clemson and Florida State, which are currently in litigation, and then Miami and North Carolina, the 4 biggest brands, the 4 schools that theoretically attract the most ratings. I think North Carolina, certainly basketball, we know all about that. And baseball, they have a very good program. Football, now you're going to see with Bill Belichick, their ratings will go up. Miami, as the best team in the ACC for most of the year, obviously didn't finish that way, did drive some pretty good ratings there during the season and is a nationally known brand. So, Florida State, Clemson, recent national champions. So you can see why all those 4 schools are included in that category. The other separate pot of money would be success bonuses, basically, success in the playoff, et cetera, allows you to get more money. So if you're at school that spends a lot on football and has the ability to get into the playoff, to win playoff games, to bring more money to the ACC, which you're just looking at it, you have Clemson, Florida State, recent national champions. Miami's a team that historically has done it. SMU, which we didn't even mention with those other 4, a team that was in the college football playoff this year. So those 2 extra pots of money, if you are able to access them, will close the gap to, according to the report, maybe a few $1,000,000 between those schools and their equivalents in the SEC and the Big Ten. So if this all goes according to plan, FSU and Clemson drop their lawsuits. Everybody's happy. The ACC is happy. They just got extended. They just kept their biggest schools in the fold. The ESPN's happy because they got these value adds from the ACC. And the schools are happy because with this extra money, they can, on top of having that guaranteed playoff spot, have pretty close to revenue parity with some of the bigger schools that they're competing against in other conferences.
The Notre Dame aspect of this is interesting to me, D, because I mean, I just feel like for years, look, it's been a great partnership, I think, for the ACC, getting Notre Dame aligned with the conference. But at the same time, now you can really use and leverage that Notre Dame brand correctly here, because look, it's great that they get the certain amount of allotted games a year, but it would be nice to get a guarantee that you're going to get a marquee matchup, as we're calling them here, and as it's referenced in the story. Like, you're guaranteed to get that with Notre Dame. So you've allowed, if you're the ACC, you've allowed Notre Dame to have this partnership without having to actually enter the conference, right? Which is, I think, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way when this was first announced. Like, man, they're going to get a lot of the benefits of being in the conference, but at the same time, they don't, they can still do their own thing as an independent. But I think this now, if you're the ACC, you say, look, we need your help in a sense. And that's what would be happening here. And Notre Dame has said that they were open to playing more against Clemson in the future. So I think that, that is definitely on the right track to happening.
And look, you look at the broader picture here in terms of, we just saw the new recruiting rankings, 247 on 3. The ACC share of those rankings is diminishing. Miami, which was the 14th ranked class, 15th ranked class, depending how you look at it, had almost 3 times as many blue chippers as the next closest ACC school. And Miami, with that kind of spread between Miami and the rest of the ACC, was only number 14 or 15 in the country. So that shows you the disparity between the SEC, Big Ten, and the ACC recruiting-wise. We're seeing it play out a little bit in the draft. We're seeing it play out a little bit in the portal. Obviously, the playoff was not a good run for the ACC this year. So you don't want that gap to keep getting bigger. You want to close that gap. You do have programs in the conference that have proven that when they have their defensive line in order, when they have their quarterback in order, they can compete with the best teams in the country. So you hope to see everybody, be able to stay afloat, because parity has been very good for the college football as a whole, I think, this year. And part of that parity means that the ACC has teams that can win the national championship. That maybe wasn't the case this year, but can be the case potentially in the future.
Yep, I think this is a step in the right direction to strengthening that. And look, it's still, everything needs to be finalized, right? But this is the ESPN report. I wish we could have gotten some real confirmation from them, but maybe in the near future we end up getting that.